Almost every protein powder in the world has a problem with one, if not all three of these three problems, either fake flavor, fake sweeteners, and fake texture. I'm going to be talking about this primarily in the context of protein powders, but this also applies to electrolyte mixes and just other drink mixes in general. For those of you that don't know, my name is Andres. I started Era Foods, and I invented a beverage called maple milk that, as far as I can tell, is the greatest protein powder that has ever existed on the earth, and I will get into the details of that later on. Now, diving straight into what I mean by fake flavor, sweeteners, and texture. So going into flavor, most protein powders out there, with the exception of the occasional vanilla flavor or chocolate flavor, have artificial flavors, which I'll get into some details with that, but even natural flavors, which I will also explain why is anything but natural. Natural and artificial flavors can contain things such as propylene glycol, hexane, a whole host of preservatives, alcohols, things like MSG, so on and so forth. And this applies to both artificial and natural flavors. The reason it also applies to natural flavors, and many companies will boast only natural ingredients or naturally flavored, is because natural only means what the initial ingredients of the flavor needed to be derived from. It has nothing to do with how it was processed, what chemicals or processes were added to that natural ingredient in order to get it to taste or look or feel or smell like the final natural flavor. So really it's no different than what we see in the fragrance industry, where you will have a whole host of ingredients such as alcohols and other liquids that are going to allow you to spray perfume better, and then there's just a term called fragrance. Now fragrance, we have no idea what it's made of. Could it be good for your health, or at least not harming your health? Of course, but the fact that we don't know, to me, is just a massive red flag. So fake flavors is the first issue with all of these drinks. Again, this goes for both protein powders and electrolyte powders. The only exceptions I've really seen are primarily chocolate flavored proteins, but oftentimes those contain cocoa powder in addition to natural or artificial flavors. Moving on to sweeteners, this is a big one that I wanted to tackle with maple milk, and there are a couple companies around the world, one that I know of in Utah and one in the UK, that are also tackling this problem with protein powders. So most of them on the market, most protein powders on the market are going to fall into two categories when it comes to the sweetener they use. It's going to be either an artificial sweetener or a natural sweetener. Now, both of these are not sugar. They are not glucose, they are not fructose, they are in no way, shape, or form a carbohydrate. They do not provide your body or your cell with any energy whatsoever. Now, the artificial sweeteners are typically things like aspartame, erythritol, sucralose, which is Splenda, and ACE-K, which is a potassium-based sweetener. All of these are artificial. All of these have been discovered, or really more so invented, in the last 50, give or take, years. Now, these natural sweeteners are things primarily like stevia and monk fruit. Those are the two most common that you will see. Now, some of them truly do come from the stevia leaf or the monk fruit, and they extract, the juices out of the monk fruit. But the bottom line is that they still do not provide any form of carbohydrate. Now, if you know anything about me personally through my HOLISTICDRE Instagram page, you know that I'm a big fan of carbohydrates. If you know Dr. Ray Peat, who is a big proponent of using clean burning carbohydrates, whether that come from fruit juices, honey, maple syrup, or yes, even in the form of white sugar, in a complete context of nutrition, is really not damaging to the body. If you really think of what sugar is, it is glucose and or fructose in different ratios or combinations. This goes for potatoes, rice, maple sugar, maple syrup, honey, white sugar, bananas, orange juice. The list goes on and on. The body knows how to use these molecules, and it has known how to use them for hundreds, thousands of years. Even if you're on a keto or carnivorous diet, the body always has glucose running through the blood. Glucose is not a foreign or unknown object to the human body, unlike things like stevia, ACE-K, erythritol, aspartame, Splenda, etc. So fake sweetness, big one. And one last point I will add to the sweetness argument is, think about who protein powders are primarily targeted to. Whether it's somebody who's just a weekend warrior or a serious athlete, it's sold in the context of being something that's a performance enhancer, or just a recovery enhancer, right? You're going to use it after you've burned calories in the gym, on a run, in a hike, whatever the case might be. And if you're doing those activities, you are burning energy, you are burning carbohydrates. Sweeteners are not going to replenish any of that. Only real carbohydrates can, or really as a whole picture, You could say energy can, which brings into question fat. Most protein powder does not contain any fat. Zero fat, zero carbs, and all protein. But we can get into that later. And the third fake point in protein powders is texture. So this one has a lot of different ways that companies will essentially fake texture. Things like gums, such as xanthan gum, guar gum, emulsifiers such as soy lecithin, sunflower lecithin, carrageenan, and then other potentially very gut irritating ingredients such as carrageenan, silicon dioxide, and corn starches or corn fibers, especially when they're coming from GMO corn. The point is all of this texture is doing two things. One, of course, it is faking texture, but two, we have to ask ourselves, why are they faking texture? What is going on in the other ingredients that make up the protein powder that is forcing these companies to actually fake the texture? And the answer is quite simple. They are stripping the food of all of its natural components, all of its carbohydrates, all of its fats, all of its, in the case of dairy protein, calcium. All of that is being stripped away and leaving you with pure protein, which tastes like garbage. If you don't believe me, take pure whey isolate, put it in some water, and let me know how it tastes. It tastes horrible. So all three of these, but more specifically with the texture, these emulsifiers, these gums, these thickeners are compensating for what they've stripped the food down to. And that's why they're able to sell this product for so cheap. Everything's been removed. All the calcium, all the casein, all the natural fats, all the milk solids, all of that is gone. So they were replacing all of that with a fake form of texture. Now moving on to the real versions of all of this, I'm going to be explaining how we've done it with maple milk and what each of these three is actually, or what's being used for each of these three in order to fill flavor, sweetener, and texture. And it's pretty simple. We did not have to engineer a 50 ingredient list of chemicals and emulsifiers in order to get what we wanted to do. Flavor, super simple. We are using 100% organic maple sugar to do both the flavor and the majority of the sweetness load. Maple sugar is made quite literally of maple sap that has been evaporated until you get to maple syrup, and then that's just taken a little bit further until you reach maple sugar. It is quite literally just organic maple trees. The sap has been removed and you dehydrate the sap. Boom, you get maple sugar. That's it. It is surprisingly high in minerals such as, I believe it's magnesium and zinc. And of course, it's going to play both the role of flavor as well as sweetness. It is almost 100% sugar in the form of sucrose, which is glucose and fructose in a certain ratio. I believe maple is a little bit more glucose leaning than fructose. And then going on to texture. Milk, if you're a fan of milk, this is going to be an amazing product for you. Milk contains all of the components that you need to gain a great texture. Now you might be concerned about, okay, how are we getting milk into a powder? And it's a fair question. Milk powder, yes, is primarily associated with being a very bottom of the barrel food. If you're really low on money and you can't even afford milk, you're going to buy milk powder because it's cheaper than fresh milk. However, with the milk powder that we have sourced, we have the best milk powder that money can buy truly anywhere in the world. I dare whoever's watching this to find a milk powder that is better than this one. And I'm not the owner of the farm, so this is just saying what I know of the farm. The milk powder is organic, A2, low temperature pasteurized, grass-fed, and 100% American cows from Northern California. Truly, a milk powder cannot be as good as this. And the probably biggest component here is both the grass-fed component, which helps a lot of people with digestion, but as well as the A2 component. A2 means that the protein that is contained within the casein half of the protein within milk is of the A2 variety. A lot of people have problems digesting the A1 beta casein protein, so 100% of the casein in this milk is coming from the A2 variety. Pairing that with being organic, low temperature pasteurized, grass-fed, and I believe a regenerative farm, don't quote me on that one, this texture component is filled and solved by the best milk that money can buy. Now, the only other two ingredients outside of this maple sugar and milk powder are sea salt and grass-fed whey from New Zealand. That's it. Those four ingredients are solving flavor, sweetness, texture across the board in the most real fashion possible. As I said in the beginning of the video, my goal was always to find a way to have a real or true version of these three, and that was solved by these four ingredients. My mission long-term is to be able to do the same for other beverages or other products, things like gummy bears, Other forms of protein powder, I am experimenting with a dairy-free protein that is a coconut milk, lime, either beef or egg white based protein. So that's going to taste like a milky shake that actually has real carbohydrates from coconut sugar, real fat from coconut cream or milk, lime for a little bit of flavor, and add natural acids. And then of course protein either coming from the egg whites or the beef protein isolate. In either case, that'll be a very kind of paleo-ish, not necessarily keto leaning, but definitely dairy-free leaning that's maybe a lot more digestible for people that truly avoid dairy at any cost. So this is what we got so far for our flagship product. I would love to hear what you think. What are some protein powders that you've tried in the past? What has been your experience with it? What's your own personal opinion on these three? I feel like sweeteners are probably the one that people have the most controversy over. I feel like it's pretty uncontroversial that your flavors should come from nature, not natural flavors, but nature. And then texture should be made through the ingredients itself, the carbs, the fat, the calcium, whatever it might be. Sweetness is where a lot of people come into question of like, should we be consuming carbohydrates? I would love to hear your personal thoughts, but this is what I've built, as natural as it can possibly get, as digestible as it can possibly get, and thanks for watching.